A legal and political victory for Donald Trump. The judge overseeing Trump's criminal hush money case in New York agreeing to delay the former president's sentencing until after the November election. CNN's Paula Reed is following the breaking story for us. Paula, what does this mean for the former president?
Well, Wolf, it's great news for the former president for now. I mean, here the judge said, look, this is a situation that is, quote, fraught with complexities. We're talking about a former president who's now a presidential candidate, and the election's just a few weeks away. And he wants to avoid any appearance that this sentencing is being impacted by the election, or that this sentencing could impact the outcome of voting in November. And this is interesting because Judge Juan Merchan has rarely conceded the Trump legal team's arguments in and around politics. But here we also have a new additional element, and that is the Supreme Court's decision on presidential immunity that could impact this case. The judge pointed out that he routinely pushes back sentencing for all kinds of reasons. And looking at all the factors here, he's decided to push this back until late November. Now, if Trump is reelected, I would expect that his lawyers will try to get this sentencing pushed back even further, arguing that you can't sentence a president-elect. You can see in this calendar right now, this would happen several weeks after the election, but also after the decision by this judge about whether this case survives. After the Supreme Court granted Trump some immunity, it is widely expected that this case will survive. And if Trump is not reelected, he will have to face this sentencing in addition to 3 other criminal proceedings currently pending. Wolf.
Our chief legal affairs correspondent, Paula Reed, thank you for that update. Our political experts are still here with me in the situation room to break all of this down. The sentencing now delayed until after the election. How significant, John, is that?
Look, as Paula noted, the president doesn't have to be in a courtroom. The president doesn't have to face the risk of either potentially jail time or suspended sentence and the embarrassment that would bring. I say the embarrassment that would bring, that's your logical conclusion. But look, every time he's had a difficult legal setback, it has somehow helped him politically, at least with his base and energy. One of the issues in the campaign right now, by the way, is that Kamala Harris has increased Democratic enthusiasm. And Democrats before who were voting against Trump when it was Biden now are voting against Trump and for her. And so in an odd way, it could help Trump to be back in court if it juiced up Republican enthusiasm, which has flattened off a little bit. I say this, and I have no idea if I'm right, because Trump has defied gravity on so many political logic and traditional political gravity on so many of these things. But here it is. Again, that doesn't mean at the debate you're not going to see the vice president say to the American people, don't you want to be proud of your president? You know, there's this case, there's that case, there's this other case. But now we wait till after the election. And as Paula said, whether he wins or loses is now even of more consequence in all these legal cases.
That's why he went back to court today. He went back to court today to grab the stage again.
Right.
Because when he had his trial, he had the stage every day and he'd do those little mini press conferences, and he kind of misses that because she's grabbed the limelight. And it's easy for him to whine and complain and do his same old, which is what he did today, and it works for him with his base.
Well, but Gloria, when he had the stage, what did he talk about? He spent 50 minutes talking about sexual assault allegations
Not a great
against
idea.
him. Not about the American people, not about policy, not about a vision for the nation. So the Republican Party is actually panicking right now. So while their nominee is trying to stay out of jail, Kamala Harris is gaining in the polls. She's out fundraising him by over $100 million. And so it really sets up this question, because remember, the people that are going to matter most are those people right in between, the independents, the disaffected Republicans. It really poses the question back to them. Is this the guy who you want to represent you here and across the world?
You know, Scott Jennings, Trump says he greatly appreciated the judge's decision. But on the political side, listen to what Republican strategist Jeff Rowe said last week about the potential impact of Trump's being sentenced before the election. Listen to this.
What about the sentencing? Is that going to be a big event?
No, baked in the cake.
You think so?
Only if they go too far. If they sentence him to prison, they're the biggest fools that have ever walked. They will piss off everybody so much for so long that our intensity will go through it will skyrocket again. And that will be a momentum juicer like we haven't seen since the Bragg indictment.
You know, Scott, it's also interesting that Karl Rove also said today it could have helped Trump. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I think I agree. This is probably a good thing for Kamala Harris because I think this judge really hates Donald Trump, and who knows what he would do to him. So the fact that we're going to see whatever punishments meted out after the election probably helps Harris. What helped Trump today, we were talking about Dick Cheney in the previous segment. You know, he got the endorsement today of the National Fraternal Order of Police. hundreds of thousands of police officers represented by the national FOP today. So I guess if you're Trump, even though it might have been an enthusiasm juicer for you, as Jim said there, at the same time, you don't have to go back to court. You don't have to face the attacks all over again. And you now have this police endorsement to tout on top of it, which is something of a shield when Kamala Harris and the Democrats, accuse you of being a felon and a criminal and so on.
Ashley, you think the Harris campaign is pleased that they won't have to deal with the potential political fallout if there had been a decision on sentencing before the election?
Absolutely. Let's not give Donald Trump any excuse for why he's going to lose this race. We anticipate that he will lose a race. All signs are pointing in that direction. But again, I think this gets back to their core point about the threat that Donald Trump poses, that he's unfit to be and to serve as the commander in chief of our nation. So this does work to their advantage for a lot of reasons. One, it delays, doesn't give him an excuse, but it also reinforces negatives.
But Trump continues to self-harm in so many ways during this campaign. I mean, do you think his advisors wanted him to go out there after court and talk about all the cases that were against him, raising the issue of the incident on an airplane, the alleged incident on an airplane with
in
a
detail,
woman,
by the way,
instead of talking about what Scott Jennings was just talking about, which was the endorsement, today by the police? They don't want this, and he insists on doing it.
But it contributes to this narrative, these reportings that Republicans really secretly want Donald Trump to lose, so that they can take back their party and position themselves to win the next presidential election.
If he's the one speaking there. Maybe I don't know what he thinks about all this. I don't know why he would bring that up. Suburban women are going to be critical in this election,
Yes.
and it hurts him there. But I want to say something else to Scott's point. He's right. The president got an endorsement from the largest police union in the country today. That should help him. However, he stood before the men and women in this country who keep us safe every day, and he lied again. He lied again. He asked them to look out for voter fraud, and he said, I hope you can watch for it. You're all over the place. Watch for it, because without voter fraud, we win so easily. He lost. He lost in 2020. He lost convincingly, bigly, to borrow a term he might like to use, and there was no widespread voter fraud. None. He had every court in the country to try to prove it in, and even judges he appointed laughed his case out of court. So to stand in front of the nation's police officers and lie about voter fraud is not a badge of distinction.
Scott, a lot of these law enforcement types, these Republicans say they're the party of law and order. You think it's possible that the party of law and order is going to support a convicted felon to become the president of the United States?
Well, most Republicans think that the case on which he was convicted should never have been brought, that it was bogus charges, and that was conducted in a kangaroo court. So when Democrats call him a convicted felon, Republicans say, this was invalid and, not right from the beginning. And it was nothing more than a political attack launched in a blue state by a political court. That's how Republicans are going to see it. And then they can pivot to this FOP endorsement and say, look, if the Fraternal Order of Police had any concerns about Donald Trump and how he follows the law, they wouldn't have endorsed him.